Yo, what is up? It is your friend Damien here with another segment of Village Talks. Y'all, I have Tim Wills here as our guest today, the Chief Impact Officer with Mentor, a national organization that is all about helping us to have best practices and frameworks that when we get in front of young people, we're showing up in a way that's going to help impact positive change in their lives. Y'all, when I had an opportunity to chat with Tim, and hear of the vast array of experiences that he has working with young people that has shaped who he is, and also a particular interest in journalism that's also been a part of his narrative, y'all. That's been so cool for me to kind of learn more of his story and really see how that evolves into his post right now. So, Tim, we would love if you would just jump in there, introduce yourself, and as a part of your introduction, if there's any pieces of your work right now that's uniquely fascinating, we would love to hear that on the front end so we can really dive more into that as we talk.
No, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. It's exciting to have this conversation with you here today. So, yes, Tim Wills, the Chief Impact Officer at Mentor. I've been at Mentor now for 4 years. And Mentor really is the national champion of mentoring across the United States and in Canada as well. Really leading the efforts to amplify the mentoring field, to encourage folks to commit to young people in their local communities, but also to bring the research and the quality needed to make sure that mentoring is quality across the country. I'm a kid of St. Louis, of a subsection of that that's now known as a hashtag Ferguson. Grew up in private Catholic schools, but also public schools as well, and had the really great opportunity to kind of explore the greater St. Louis area and to see both the good and the bad and the challenges in between of that. In high school, I had the opportunity to kind of explore my passion to be a journalist, having a internship at a local TV station. And it's funny because in my first week there, the TV news director came to me and was like, I didn't know you were in high school. Like, how did you get in here? So, who you know matters. And we'll talk more about that here soon.
Absolutely.
But went on to go to Southern Illinois University at Carbondale and majored in journalism, did TV news and anchoring and reporting. Really had the opportunity to tell young people's stories
Mm.
who were most often in foster care. And after school, they would go to the local Boys and Girls Club. And that begun a passion that I really didn't know I had around understanding, advocating, and kind of working in this youth development field. What I learned in college really quickly, um, when a professor assigned a textbook to us called When It Bleeds, It Leads,
Mm.
that wasn't the journalism I thought I was entering into, right? I thought I was entering into journalism that tells stories of hope and opportunity and the future.
Mm.
And it quickly became the opposite. And so Boys and Girls Clubs became kind of that first place where I began to find my own voice while also advocating for young people at the same time. Went on to work with the St. Louis Public Schools and managing a mentoring program, and then came back to Boys and Girls Clubs. Had the great privilege of living and working in Chicago and DC and Baltimore, and really having the opportunity to see young people in different places and spaces.
Yeah.
And then went on to Southern Alabama as well. Um, in Alabama, I had a chance to lead the education program at a countywide detention center and really got to see young people from that perspective while also serving as CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs there. But throughout all of that, I've been a foster parent to over 21 kids, and have joined on their journey as they try to discover themselves and a pathway forward. So that's a little bit about me and my journey. Today, I live in Houston and really exploring one of the largest cities in the country and trying to better understand how young people navigate the streets, the world, by air and plane and boat and all the other ways to
Mm.
be successful.
It seems like you have a genuine intrigue as it pertains to what you named earlier, not just youth development, but having experiences and opportunities to see young people reared in different conditions in different geographic areas. And I'm sure a lot of that has contributed to your post that you occupy right now, right? as you are one of the key leaders with the Mentor organization. My question for you is, as somebody who has interests that you've kind of shared with us as a part of your introduction, does that span beyond America, right? Have you gotten to a point where you have international intrigue and would just be very interested, not only to hear if you have intrigue that has kind of led you to do research or do exploration beyond the States, but also like what correlations have you found as you've been
Yeah.
in all of these different spaces and maybe even beyond America?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in my tenure at Boys and Girls Clubs, they had an international division. They're really focused in on propping up Boys and Girls Clubs in other countries, in Africa and Costa Rica and other places. So really got the opportunity to begin to learn from some of those organizations around the challenges young people face abroad. And then at Mentor, we work with some international partners, not just in Canada, but in London and Africa and other places that are leading the charge for mentoring in those areas. Here's what I know is true and for sure. Young people in the world are the same. It's the conditions in which they live in that are different and compounding.
Mm,
But their desires, their hopes and dreams for the future, what they want to achieve, and how they need folks in their circle to help them resonates no matter where they live in the world. And so I think it's incumbent on us as a human race of people to recognize the full potential of young people, regardless of the circumstances that they live in, but to focus in on the opportunities that could exist that meets their potential that I believe and that we at Mentor also believe is evenly distributed.
hmm. So a part of, or at least one of the divisions that you oversee is the research and practice work coming out of the Mentor organization. So I'm curious, particularly as you talk about young people being the same, conditions might be different, but those hopes, aspirations, and the potential of a nurturing adult or village of nurturing adults to come
Yeah.
around them and be the change that is the differentiator or difference maker in their lives. What is the research telling us as it pertains to how we can actually see this work happen at scale? How we can see once more, might I even say, every young person, and I'm not even going to say young person, quote unquote, would need, but every young person be able to get access to these caring adults, to these mentor figures. How does that happen?
Well, one, I would say that the research says that there's still a mentoring gap for
Mm,
young people in the United States. And as we did a study a couple of years ago called Who Mentored You, it really showed that this Generation Z group
mm,
is the most at risk. They were actually on a pathway to be mentored less than a generation just ahead of them, which would have been the millennials, which is backtracking back towards that older generation time frame. So we have a lot of work to do right now for young people because the rise of isolation, the rise of being disconnected, post-COVID remnants are still here. And so we really need to show up for them. And the research shows that when young people have folks in their corner, they do better, they feel more supported, and leads to better outcomes for them, no matter where they are, right? So it's really incumbent on us for all adults to show up for all kids in every community as much as possible.
So when you say young folks, when they have folks in their corner, they do better. You and I are both practitioners who've been at this work for a while, who've seen different iterations of youth development work.
Hmm.
And I resonate very deeply without having in-depth kind of research lens or approach. From my perspective, it's just boots on the ground.
Yep.
And to the point that you're making and the point that I'm trying to make, even when you have different mentorship methodologies, you have women leading girls' dance programs with an element of social and emotional learning. You might have the BAM program, which is prominent here in Chicago, Becoming a Man, where they have their trauma-informed circles and groups. And the research that they've conducted, namely youth guidance, is showing that that is transformative for those boys and wow, girls, right, who are sitting in those circles. You have my boy here, and I'm again making it super hyper local because that's what I'm familiar with. But like for instance, Champs Male Mentoring Organization, it's a
Mhm.
lot of exposure points that they and I know Champs they
Yeah.
connect with y'all on a national level too. But a lot of like, man, let's get the boys not just to the Bulls game, but let's take them to NASCAR. Let's get them to the Final Four and get them similar to some of the work that you've done in the past with the media team, right? Behind the scenes, helping to create some of these stories that the world is then going to be able to take in to kind of really, get value from what's going on with the Final Four and our boys, our kids being behind the scenes helping with that presentation. So I guess implicit in all of that is, yeah, just any guidance on. We know that the methodology is different, but we trust that the nurturing adults can still make a difference. Like, what does the research say as it pertains to kind of to some extent being agnostic when it comes to like the curriculum or when it comes to the approach to mentorship, but still seeing value across the board? If implicit in
Yeah.
that, you can take
No.
something from that.
No, I hear you. I hear where you're going.
Yeah.
So I think at Mentor, we value two things,
Yeah.
formal mentoring and informal mentoring. Formal mentoring is the programs you just talked about, who are intentional about engaging with young people, providing them experiences and opportunities, and really showing up when young people need it the absolute most, right?
Mm,
They're there. And informal mentoring is this theory that like everyone should have a mentoring mindset so that young people are surrounded in their village, right? This
yeah.
whole village concept, by adults who care,
Mm,
right? My hope and dream for kids in America is simple. I want to be able to walk up to any kid, any place, at any time,
mm,
and ask them what adult is in your corner? And they should be able to immediately give me an answer that's not a parent or an immediate family member, right?
yeah.
Because they're surrounded by folks in their communities that care. Now, that could be the bus driver on the public transportation
Hmm.
who knew to say good morning or afternoon or ask a kid how they're doing. That could be the cashier at the bodega when the kid's coming in to getting a bacon, egg, and cheese on a bagel
Yeah.
who says like, I hope you have a good day at school or bring me your report card and I'll give you a reward for that, or the cafeteria worker at their school, or the custodial person, or the ticket taker at the local basketball game. That it's every single person in the village that matters,
Mm.
so that young people know that they don't have to grow alone and that
Yes.
relationships are there to support them and to drive their success.
So I gave a lot of examples of like the formal mentoring, and as you spoke, I think what I'm hearing in your examples are iterations of what informal mentoring could look like. So, in those instances where we want to see more of that informal mentoring happening, does that have to come along with training? Is it some cultural work that needs to happen within a region for people to understand the power and potential for them to be mentors? How and when have you seen that village enacted in such a way?
Yeah, I would say that we see it every day.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just don't like, there's no button you wear, right?
Yeah.
Right? So you see it in coaches, you see it from teachers, you see it from people in everyday situations who care about the folks who are in their community, right? It's this
Mm.
concept of like, how do we get back to like the kids on the block or our
Yeah.
kids and not
Yeah.
those kids,
Yeah.
right? So that you know all the kids' names on the block that you live on. So I think we see it every day. Is there some like training? Yes, we could offer a training to folks so to become a better mentor, where they
Hmm.
can go to our website and get some tips on doing so. But the key piece is showing up and being there for kids when they least expect it and need it the most. And you don't know when they need it the most
Yeah.
because they need it the most every single moment of every single day.
Wow. I wonder if one of the differentiating factors is not, and I know it's important to have, again, these nurturing figures, these people who are in the corner of these young people rooting for them. Absolutely important. I resonate very deeply with that, with the work that I have my hands on and the 2 decades of kind of youth development work that I've done. But I wonder if a part of, if you will, the training or intentional conversation that needs to be had is actually with the young people so that they have an awareness that, hey, on a daily basis, you actually have people rooting for you. You actually have people that you have access to outside of your parents, outside of, uncle, auntie now, that literally, as you understand the power and potential of you tapping into some of these adult assets and or peer assets, that just strengthens your ability to thrive in life. I just wonder if you resonate with that point any, if some of the work is just on a recognition of the young people
Mhm.
to realize who and
Yep.
what they have.
No, absolutely. Living life is about who you know and who's in your corner,
Mm,
right? So the more we can teach young people to identify the folks in their lives who they know is in their corner, that opens doors of opportunity for them in ways that they can't even imagine at this point, but that they have those people that they can count on. So, look, I think community, village,
yeah,
however we're going to term this today, right?
yeah.
That support is about surrounding young people, and young people will recognize the folks who are helping to help them thrive.
Hmm.
And when that happens, we begin to see neighborhoods and communities and villages that have a sense of joy that wasn't there before. And I think that's the longing that young people are seeking.
I have a couple of questions that I want to wrap up in
Go
one.
for it.
So the initial question was kind of centered around when did you see the concept of village just happen in such a way that it just really deeply resonates with you? But I want to nuance that question a little bit. Because I'm also just thinking of the power and potential of just parents being supported as a part
Mhm.
of the wraparound support that kids need is actually for their parents to be thriving and for their parents to be healthy and for their parents in some instances to be cared for as well. So, yeah, as a part of again this whole concept of the village coming together and support of young people, but then also in support of their families, I just wonder, and all of your work, when have you seen like that whole aspect of like coming alongside of parents or supporting parents of the youth that we want to thrive happen in such a way that it made an impression upon you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have the great privilege of like traveling around the United States
Yeah.
and meeting folks, and I'm inquisitive, so I ask a lot of questions,
Hmm.
clearly, as a journalist. Um, I would say that this happens a lot more than we give it credit for
Mm,
in America. That there's a lot of great organizations who are really working together to wrap around parents and families so that the status quo doesn't continue. And in a lot of instances, I've seen firsthand where churches in particular have really stepped up, not just for those most in need, but for those who just need an encouraging hand.
mm,
And I think sometimes we divide and conquer in our cities and states and communities for like those who are at risk or those
yeah.
from these minority groups or
Hmm.
those young people at this failing school. But the thing about building thriving communities or villages is that those things don't really matter.
Mm,
What matters is that we're showing up for humans every day, whether they're adults or kids or grandparents or elders or whoever it may be, and that we're providing the supports they need as a whole community,
mm,
right? The best example of that in the United States will always be the Harlem Children's Zone, right? And how it took block by block to respond to the needs of kids and families. And so we can continue to replicate those types of things, or we can also encourage folks to just care for your neighbor and the young person that lives on the same street that you do.
mm. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. So I want to give you an option as we advance this conversation to either further talk about what you deem as the biggest issue young people are faced with, or society in general is faced with, and or you can talk about what you're most encouraged by, that you're seeing in the field, that again just uniquely encourages you, and gives you optimism for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think those two things are connected. I think a pressing issue for young people right now is relationships and connectedness. Um, Especially as we venture into the worlds of artificial intelligence, as you can gain way too much information in your phone, in your hand. It's easy to slip into a sense of isolation and just restricting your movements in self to a small area, right?
Mm,
So I think that's a challenge for young people. And I think there's this compounding challenge of that adults need to listen to young people at the same time.
mm,
Um, we can't improve the outcomes from them without their input, their knowledge, their hopes and ambitions factored into that we hear directly from them. Not what I thought I needed when I was a kid, but what young people today are telling us are
mm,
needed. So what excites me is that young people are showing up. They're lifting up their voices. They're advocating for their needs. They're pushing back on what adults believe may be important for their generation in a manner that I don't think I've seen from other generations.
mm.
And I do think there is a undergird of momentum happening right now that says relationships, mentoring relationships is the essential infrastructure for young people's success.
Mm.
And I think that momentum for that is what's exciting me, where communities, mayors, leaders, pastors, others are beginning to recognize more and more that in order for us to build these thriving communities, we have to put relationships on a pedestal and ensure that young people have the social capital they need to succeed.
You know what was very interesting about 5 years ago? We have a key person here in the city who was connected to one of the organizations that I work with here. And when he was asked, in all of your years of doing violence interruption work with young adults all the way up to seniors, like, bro, like, how do we enact positive change? How do we get people to put the guns down? How do we, change violent communities? And in the simplest terms possible, he said the same thing that you just said. Like, it's relationships, it's coming alongside folks, it's them at all ages, not just as young people, understanding that not only do you have somebody in your corner, but you have a village that's rooting you on. So I just think that that's powerful. The more that I have conversations like this, to
Yeah.
further solidify in my brain how much of a difference maker mentorship actually is. I've seen it in my own life, and it's fascinating to hear how much the research and how much even you and all of the different exposure points that you've had, and even the vastness of the teams that you lead right now. And it all points back to relationships and the
Yeah.
importance of that. So we are at the kind of concluding parts of this segment. This has been so fascinating for me, and I know that there are so many clips and segments from this that we'll be able
Yeah.
to slice out and give to people in bite-sized pieces and just wow them with some of the simple but profound truths that were shared in this. So I thank you for that. But what I want to do now is just what I do in every segment is literally actually metaphorically or
Okay.
imaginatively, give you a magic wand, right? And with said magic wand, you have the ability to do whatever it is that you want to do with said wand to enact positive change in the world. I think I know where you're gonna go because I've seen a thread or I've heard a thread in this conversation, but you have your wand. What are you gonna do with that?
Yeah, I mean, I said it earlier around just making sure that every single kid in America can answer a simple question and
Mm,
point to that adult
mm,
that matters in them. But um, that to me is foundational and fundamental.
mm.
But my magic wand
There it is.
would create thriving communities
Mm,
where young people have a sense of joy and purpose that is unmatched and unchallenged
mm,
so that their full potential is reached every single day.
mm.
And so that's what I secretively work towards every day as
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure that every single kid has a champion in their corner.
Mm. And when we talk about those champions, I know that there is a growing body of work that's proving the efficacy and impact of peer mentoring as well.
Yeah,
Um, I guess without having to overthink how to ask this question, is peer mentoring in your mind adequate as well, or does it have to be
absolutely.
those adults in the lives of young people?
Yeah, peer mentoring is key and important. We've been seeing an
Yeah.
uptick in the number of peer mentoring happening around the country, primarily in schools is where
Yeah.
we see this that happens the most. But yeah, it's critically important because having connections and relationships isn't just about adult and child,
Hmm.
right? But it's also about peer to peer. It's about other folks in your community. So like we want to make sure that young people have plenty of touch points of connections. And there's no better connection in my mind than having someone who's closest to you in age and demographic
Yeah.
and experiences as well. We can support an
Yeah.
adequate and quality peer mentoring program so that
Yeah.
it's reflective of the goals that need to be accomplished. But
Yeah.
yes, peer mentoring is an exceptional way to continue this mentoring relationship experience as well.
Yeah, so I definitely, Tim, at this point, want to give you whatever concluding or space for whatever final word or concluding thought that you would like to leave for my audience and any of your folks who are going to watch this. What do you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I would just encourage everyone to be a champion for mentoring and young people in America. You can do that by going to mentoring.org to find out more information or to find a mentoring program by zip code closest to you. You can do that on our website as well. Um, and to just advocate and show up for young people each and every day. So, um, hopefully there's a kid in your community who one day will name you
Mm.
as the person who's in their corner.
All right, y'all. That's been another segment of Village Talks. This was absolutely amazing. And again, I used this word earlier and I want to restate it. There was a simplicity in all of the amazing nuggets that were shared today, and just super appreciative and salute you, Tim, for all of not only the work that you do now, but the work that you've done over time, right? To invest in kids. That's again a common thread that's been in all of your story, including the 20 plus foster kids. We didn't
Yeah.
miss that. That you even said, I'm going to bring super close to be that person in their corner, man. So we appreciate just learning more of your story today. And thank you for being our guest.
Thank you for having me. It was a great pleasure.
All right. Peace out.